Hello everybody and welcome back to another microeconomics YouTube video. Today we are really diving into economics, microeconomics rather, and talking about perfect competition, what it is and why it matters. So first of all, what perfect competition is a market structure, right? But what is a market structure? Good question. A market structure is quite simply the conditions of an industry. What do we mean when we say the conditions of an industry, right? Well, essentially, we mean the number of sellers, the ease or difficulty for a new firm to enter, and the types of products sold. And when we're talking about perfect competition, that is one of the market structures that we're going to be talking about in the rest of this class. And perfect competition is defined primarily by the fact that each firm, and remember, a firm is just any organization that creates an output from inputs, right? So businesses, nonprofits, so on and so forth, right? Each firm faces many competitors that sell identical products. So our four criteria for perfect competition, well, the first one is what we just said, right? The many firms producing identical products. The second one, the second criteria, is that many buyers and many sellers are available. The third condition that we have is that buyers and sellers have all the relevant information so that they can make rational decisions. And our last criteria for perfect competition is free entry and exit, right? Firms can enter or leave the market without any restrictions or penalties. And when we're talking about perfect competition, one of the key things that we are talking about is the fact that in perfect competition, they are what's called price takers. And what is a price taker? Good question. A price taker is referring to the fact that any firm in a perfectly competitive market, they must take the prevailing market price as given. So this price taker definition becomes a bit more obvious and clear to us, both once we get into the charts and actually doing some supply and demand and cost curve analysis, right, which we will do in some subsequent videos. But also this becomes clear when we think about firms that aren't price takers, right? Monopoly, insulin providers, right? They're allowed to charge however much they want for insulin. They are price makers rather than a price taker. So price takers have to, just like the name says, take the price that is prevailing in the market, that is currently in the market, and that's the one that they're going to get. They can't influence price at all. So if they can't influence price at all, then what are perfectly competitive firms doing, right? And that actually brings us to our second part of Chapter 8, which is how do perfectly competitive markets, let's use that abbreviation, or perfectly competitive firms, rather, make output decisions. So since they can't make any pricing decisions, they're going to make a decision on the only thing that they do have any power of, which is their output, right? So perfectly competitive firms have one major decision. And that is what quantity do they produce? Or in other words, what's their quantity, right? Perfectly competitive firm, again, like we said, has to accept the price. And so what are they trying to do? They're trying to choose a quantity that will do what? That will maximize profit. And what is profit? Profit is nothing more than the difference between the total revenue and the total cost, right? So ultimately, they're trying to find the quantity that's going to cause there to be the greatest amount of a gap between total revenue and total cost. In order to do this, they're going to be doing incremental analysis, right? Or also known as marginal analysis. And part of that marginal analysis is using what's called marginal revenue. What is this marginal revenue? So marginal revenue is defined as the additional revenue gained from selling one more unit. Mathematically, our marginal revenue, which we're going to abbreviate as MR, is equal to the change in my total revenue divided by my change in my quantity. So we can also rewrite this as using our change symbols, right? Our delta symbol here. All right, this is only half of the picture though, right? They're doing incremental analysis. They need the marginal revenue, the additional or incremental revenue gained from selling an additional unit. And the second half of this is that they are going to need the marginal cost. And the marginal cost is, you guessed it, the additional cost per, actually this probably is better. Let's go ahead and say it's the cost, rather, per additional unit sold. That is more concise. And we love conciseness and succinctness in economics, right? And the formula for this is going to be our change in our total costs divided by our change in our quantity. Or, again, using that delta, we can abbreviate it by this. And what is essentially our golden rule in economics, the thing that we're constantly going to be doing over and over again, is as follows. So this is something where we are going to be doing this throughout the rest of the class. So it is really important for us to, accentuate this. We're going to put in a little breakout box here, right? So the profit maximizing choice. And really this is the profit maximizing rule. And the profit maximizing rule states that in order to maximize profit, you should produce a quantity, right, Q star, where the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. So we want to produce up until the point where the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. So let's do a quick example. So if we have the raspberry market, and we are talking about raspberry farms, right? First of all, since these are price takers, that means that the price is going to be determined in the industry supply and demand market, right? So this is going to be the raspberry industry, for lack of a better word. And we're going to have some equilibrium price here, right? Some P star, which is going to equal, in this case, it's going to equal $4. And the quantity of raspberries is going to be 80 for the full market. Now, the individual firm is going to look a bit different. So essentially, the individual firm is going to, they're still going to have price over here, right? Actually, it might be price or costs. We're just going to kind of say dollars over there. And now instead of uppercase Q, we're going to kind of, either say Q1 or lowercase q or something like that, just to kind of remind us that this is some raspberry, I don't know why I'm saying raspberry farm, right? So this is, Jill's raspberry farm or whatever the case may be. So essentially what happens is that this price, since they're price takers, this price is reflected onto their graph, and it becomes a flat line that is equal to the demand and the marginal revenue. So in competition, both the demand and the marginal revenue are perfectly elastic, right? Completely flat, has a slope of 0, perfectly elastic in terms of the slope of the curve for both the demand and the marginal revenue curve. And so in order to make this decision, right, this is our marginal revenue curve, right? So that's awesome. But we still need our marginal cost curve, right? And we talked about marginal cost last time, and what did we learn? We learned that marginal cost looks something like a Nike swoosh. And we find here that if we produce where the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue, that is going to be at 80 packs. And so this is not actually the best example here. This should probably be something more like 800. But so they are going to pick essentially the Q, right? Their Q star, where that marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. That's going to be the thing that's going to maximize their profit. All right, excellent job getting through. If you have any questions, please go ahead and leave a comment or send me an email.